So I'm gonna put a figure out here. 0%. This is where everyone starts. Everyone. Elon Musk started at 0%. Steve Jobs started at 0%. They didn't start with anything special. They didn't start with anything great. They all started here. They all started here. Michael Jordan started at 0%. And one of my favorite leaders of all time, Nelson Mandela, started at 0%. All these characters and many more started here. They weren't born with anything special. They started at 0%. And they all had a vision. What did they have? A vision. They had a vision. And all of them, every single one of them, were deep learners. Now, why would I say that? The common thing that these people had were they were deep learners. They all started off with problems. You know, Elon Musk started off with problems. We know Steve Jobs started off with problems. We know Michael Jordan started off with problems. We definitely know Nelson Mandela started off with problems. And so, as a deep learner, what happens is, this is what happens as a deep learner. When we get problems, this is a great deep learning moment. Because as we get the problems, we've got two choices here. We try to avoid that problem. We complain about that problem. We become victims of that problem and we then complain for the next 20, 30 years. Or we try and solve these problems. We find a way to solve the problems. And all these guys here failed. They all failed. And they kept on failing. If you read about Steve Jobs, and I had the pleasure of reading a lot of his books, he was always making mistakes. He was always failing. He was always having problems, but that just made him stronger. And what's interesting, every time you have a problem and you try and solve a problem that you care about, that's what happens when you're a deep learner. You get knowledge to solve a problem. You'll probably make mistakes, you'll probably fail, but in that process, what happens is this 0% becomes 10%. You've actually grown. You've actually gone up 10%. Every time you fail, you go up 10%. But what happens is when we fail and we have a toxic environment around us and people say, well, you failed, you're not good at that. You failed, this is not for you. You're pathetic at this. Why are you wasting your time in this? You're at 10%. But this is the thing, all these guys, Elon Musk, Michael Jordan, Nelson Mandela, Steve Jobs, they started at 10%. And the thing is, because they were problem solvers and because they were solving problems that they cared about, through that, they gained a vision. They gained a vision. I mean, if you read about Michael Jordan, he was rejected early as a basketball player, but it didn't stop him. He saw the problems, he saw his weaknesses. He himself talks about how he failed so many times. That didn't stop him, he made him a problem solver. And through that he failed, and through that, this started to go up 20%, and then 30%. And this kept on going up and up and up because They were deep learners. They weren't surface learners. And through the education system, we were taught to be a surface learner, which is, here's your pieces of information, reproduce it for a grade, and then follow a process, and then automate that process. And that's what's happened for a majority of people. These guys, and one more thing, by the way, before I go to these guys, and what happened, most people came out of the education systems fearing failure, being scared of failure, avoiding problems. These guys all faced problems. I mean, Nelson Mandela, he fought, he had a vision, he had problems, he failed, he spent 27 years in jail. He had that vision, he kept on going, and when he got out, and he said he didn't have any ill feelings towards the people that put him in there, because he knew he had a job to do, he knew he had to solve a problem. He basically said, I've been training for this all my life. I spent this time in prison to train myself to lead this country. And that's exactly what he did. All these guys never ever gave up because they were deep learners. All of them were deep learners. They all started at 0%. And what happens is a lot of people, they don't find the problem, to solve that they care about. And so you see people at work and they're bored at work, and a lot of people, usually what happens is they do just enough to earn a salary, just enough not to get sacked. It's the surface learning mentality. They get the job, they earn that job, they, again, get into the workforce, they get information, they reproduce that information, they follow a process, they better that process, and then they get a reward at the end of the week, which is a salary, and then they do that for the next 20, 30 years. And then they avoid failure, they avoid mistakes, they avoid taking risks, and really their adventure is the weekend. And this is why a lot of people, and you hear CEOs talk about this all the time. Oh, I wish I had a staff, I wish my staff were more like this person or more like that people. Or they say, oh, gee, I wish more staff just cared. And it's not so much whether a staff cares or not, it's that maybe they're not excited enough. Maybe this is the job's not exciting enough that they want to be there, that they want to care enough, that they see this as an opportunity to solve a problem that they care about. Because deep learning is all about applying the knowledge to a problem that you care about, and through that process you find your calling. Elon Musk, if you see Elon Musk, he just keeps solving problems, and before you know it, he's doing one thing, he's doing something else, he's doing something else. Elon Musk could have retired 20 years ago if he wanted to and lived like a king for the rest of his life, but he's a deep learner. Guys like that don't stop. Steve Jobs could have retired as well. He's a deep learner. Deep learners never stop. They never stop until they die. And all these people here started at 0%. And when you're a deep learner, guess what happens? You don't just stop at 20% or 30% or 40%. You take risks, you fail, you make mistakes. And every time you do that, because you have this vision that in your head you create, it's your vision you create as a deep learner, because you see things through your feelings and emotions that not other people see. And then you fight for that. And you fight for that because you're excited. I mean, you look at the iPhone and how the iPhone came about. It was Steve Jobs' vision. It was Steve Jobs' ability to trial and error, to make mistakes, to try this and try 10,000 different things. But he had the vision. He had the vision that every time he made a mistake, he was getting closer, and this percentage was going up and increasing. So remember, it doesn't matter what you do. You can't start at less than 0%. But even these guys who changed the world, who have become historic figures. Even these guys started at 0%. And they were deep learners, and that was their strategy. Now, whether they intently did it or not, whether they intently became deep learners or not, I don't know, but their actions and the way they work is all the characteristics of deep learning. They solve problems, they use their knowledge, they grow, they fail, they develop, they solve problems, they grow, they develop, and then all of a sudden they end up somewhere where they never envisaged. I mean, Elon Musk now is on Twitter, and he started in technology. So when we're deep learners, sometimes we don't know where we're going to end up because we start tapping areas of our brain we haven't even tapped in for a while, and all of a sudden we're solving one problem, we see something else, we solve another problem, we learn something else, and then we find another calling, and we're here, but we're always growing and developing, and again, that percentage keeps going up. What I see in a lot of the corporations, a lot of workforces, as surface learners, what happens is you go up and you plateau like this. Very, very few people keep rising in their work because of fear of failure. They don't want to take risks. Sometimes in their jobs, they're too scared to take risks because if they make a mistake, they could lose their job. So this mentality just kicks into their personal life, and the only time they get some adventure is when they've got a Sunday where they can go to the park. And the way I see it, deep learning is a way of life, but the adventure is every day, every single day of your life. The mindset of being a deep learner, everything that you do is an adventure, is based on that principle, that calling, that problem that you care about. Because you're not chasing. Most people that I speak to, and these are friends of mine, they're doing a job, they're not really passionate, but they're doing it for a salary, and I get that, and that's understandable. You want to pay your mortgage, you want to pay your bills at the end of the month, but it's not their calling. They're not excited about it. They're doing just enough to get that payment at the end of the week or at the end of the fortnight, and they've automated that process so well that what happens is there's not a lot of risk taken because they don't need to take risks. Why would I take any risks? A friend of mine said to me the other day, oh, for the next 20 years I'll have a job here, that's fantastic, I'll pay my house and that's great. But deep learners don't think that way. It's always taking risks. It's always going that extra step. It's always allowing our feelings and emotions to continually grow. And that's what these four characters did. And anyone that becomes a permanent deep learner has the opportunity to do what these guys did. And I'm thriving as a deep learner to be the best version of myself. I'm thriving to fulfill my calling, but I don't know what other calling will come my way. But I know one thing. Last week I met 24 new people. 24 new people that came into my life that I'd never met before. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. I'm having some interesting conversations. I'm talking about some interesting problems. I'm talking about some AI problems, some human problems. I spoke to a neurologist who reached out to me and we had an interesting conversation about the brain. The thing about deep learning is you don't know where it's going to end up. You just keep going. And the thing is, the journey, not so much the destination, but the journey is the exciting part. And I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun doing these videos. I'm inherently a shy guy. I don't like publicly speaking, so I'm doing this because I am seeing a problem, so I'm trying to solve it. Anyone can be here. Everyone starts at 0%. You decide. It doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what your background is. Anyone can be this. You just have to choose to be a deep learner.